Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Gonna do a kind of like a beginner's guide to the JZX90. Let's say you just got one for Christmas, or you just own one, or you just imported one, I should say. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna break up this video into engine only stuff, interior only stuff, and then body, like exterior stuff. So that could be brakes, wheels, tires, etc. So let's just start off right off the bat in the engine bay. So let's say this is your first car ever, or maybe you're coming from an S chassis or things like that. The way things work on a JZX is a little bit different when it comes time to find parts. So starting right off the bat, let's say you just get this thing fresh off the boat. First thing that I would recommend doing is spark plugs. And while you're doing the spark plugs, go ahead and do the valve cover gaskets. If you open it up and you find a pool of oil in there, that means the valve cover gaskets are definitely leaking and they need to be replaced. Once you have the valve covers off, I would go ahead and recommend changing the PCV nipple right there. This should be normally a straight fitting out, but I ended up getting the wrong one. It still fit down here, it's just different. It has a 90 degree on there, so I had to cut my hose right there. That's not a big deal, but just keep that in mind. You can buy these off Drift Motion, and you can buy the valve covers as well from Drift Motion, or find the Toyota part number. At some point in this video, I'll go ahead and explain how to get part numbers from this website, and you use that part number on ToyoDIY, and it'll tell you the part number that's used stateside for these.
So here's the website I was talking about. It's Amayama, and pretty much to get to the JZX platform, you go here, parts catalog, Toyota. You scroll down, you can hit Mark 2 here. This will pretty much take you to where you need to go though. To frames and all that stuff. This is looking for my specific one. Obviously if you have a chaser or something like that, you would select it from wherever it is. Here we go, chaser. But for me, Mark 2. And then mine's this one. And then here. And then pretty much, so we were looking for the valve cover gaskets. We go to cylinder head. And boom, there it is. So valve cover gaskets, that's the valve cover. Right there, you can click on this and it'll take you to the actual thing. Here's the part number that you can search for in Google, and here we go on Amazon. Boom, right here, a set of non-VVTi valve covers for $60 on Amazon. You get prime shipping. That's not bad. So let's go back here and let's say my oil filter cap isn't working, or my oil cap isn't working. So you click on the oil cap. It's like, okay, this should be a common piece among different Toyotas. And then this is the second website that you have to go to, ToyoDIY, where you'll get that part number that I copied from here for the oil cap. And then you can keep it on North America in general, these two. You can paste the code in there. It'll do search. And here in North America, that oil cap comes from a ES300, and it comes from a Toyota Supra. Let me get rid of this one, because those models that we didn't have here. And then these two right here. So that's how you use those two websites in order to find parts. And as you saw earlier, it gives you a really good diagram of stuff. So yeah, so you can pretty much piece together everything you need from this website when you need to find parts or look up how something might work.
A lot of these things are interchangeable between 2J and 1Js. A lot of engine parts are interchangeable between 2J and 1J. Certain things are, certain things aren't. That's what the ToyoDIY is for. So jumping back into the engine bay, things that need to be replaced, I want to say almost immediately, regardless of the mileage, is if you have a 1J or 2J, replace the crank pulley. Here's the original crank pulley that came with my 1J. And what ends up happening is these end up separating. So this inner ring right here, where my finger is, the rubber part right here deteriorates. You can see the cracks where it's forming right there. So what ends up happening is while you're going down the highway or drifting, whatever, this thing will literally separate itself, and this part will come off this outer ring and will shoot the pulley out. Yeah, so we want to avoid that, and what you can do is you can get a ATI spring or you can get a fluid dampener. This car has a fluid dampener that I installed already. Kind of hard to see, but it's not that bad. I do need to replace the rear cover as it hits, and I'll do a video on how to remove the crank pulley bolt because it's pretty rough. So the reason why I need to remove it again is because the rear cover should be replaced. This is the next point. See these grooves or these marks right here? Nothing, my finger doesn't catch, but it does wear into the cover and it can create a hole into the cover. So you can buy a new valve cover. I'm sorry, not valve cover. Timing belt cover. This is the lower part of it. We're using that part number. $100 for that. It's a good piece to replace. Next thing you should do are cam seals. I haven't done those yet, but I do have the seals already. Cam seals, valve stem seals. I'm going to do all of those at once. Other stuff that I would recommend replacing: water lines and your coolant lines, water or coolant lines. So these clamps right here like to wear out after a while. These style clamps right here, the one I'm pinching with my hand, those like to wear out after a while, and you need to replace them with ringworm clamps. So go ahead, and I would recommend doing that on any fittings that are leaking. So what I ended up doing was going to Harbor Freight and getting a radiator pressure tester, and it pressurizes the system, and you're able to find coolant leaks that way. So definitely check all the water lines. You can go to that website that I showed earlier, where you can find kind of like a diagram of all the water lines and where they go. Next thing you should do is go ahead and replace like fluids, like power steering fluid, brake fluid, clutch fluid, hydraulic fan fluid. Just so it has like a fresh start, since you're the new owner of it. You don't have to change them again. Power steering lines, you can pretty much get anything like that from a parts store if you take the piece with you, and you can match it up to something at the parts store. Next thing is the high pressure line that feeds the rack. You can take the fittings to, if it is leaking, you can take those fittings to any hydraulic shop in your area, and they will be able to fix it for you. They can make you a brand new braided line or just a regular hose line. As long as you take them the fittings, they can just weld to it, and they'll make you a new line. Next thing I recommend checking out are going to be your engine mounts. This is really important. So for engine mounts, you can see right there, highly recommend changing those. Toyota engine mounts like to separate, so whenever I did the engine mounts, I was able to lift the engine up a little bit, and I didn't have to unbolt the bolts. The engine mount was literally separated. So definitely recommend either going KFD, it's a Russian company, or Excessive Manufacturing. I recommend Excessive Manufacturing more because they're in the United States. So any issues you have, you can just contact them. Another thing I check out is also the style of mounts are different. The bottom holes where it connects to the subframe can be a single bolt or a 2-bolt style. So look under there and see which one it is. Next thing I would recommend replacing is the heater line or the heater core valve. This valve looks like the original one from Toyota, and I would recommend swapping it out with a new one. I'll show you the new one I have now, and I'm going to make a separate video on how to install this. It's not too bad, not too hard. It's just you need to save this retainer right here. It has to go into this one. So that should be replaced, because what happens is these nipples right here on the old ones, they'll snap off just because of all the heat and stuff it's seen over the years. So highly recommend replacing that. You can find these stateside. So yeah, I'm going to do a video on that. Next thing I recommend checking are, obviously, replace the battery if it's not brand new already. Check your covers, any cracks or anything like that. Timing belt should be, either you should know the mileage of the car and if it's already been replaced, or if that's something you're going to have to end up doing. So every 100,000 kilometers, the timing belt needs to be serviced on these things, on these 1Js. Mine was replaced recently, so it's not, and I checked it too, didn't have any signs of cracks or anything weird going on. Water pumps on a 1JZ, on a JZX specifically, these are hydro fans, and this hydro fan, pretty much the fluid heats up, and that determines how much the fan needs to spin, in a nutshell. These hydro fans rarely fail, but when they do, they fail at the water pump where coolant will leak out of it. And what you need to do is either get the water pump rebuilt or find a used one, as these new from Toyota can be $1,000. So that's kind of a hard pill to swallow. So depending on your situation, keep an eye out for that. One solution that a lot of guys do is the radiator can be swapped to a coil one, but this one is a JZX90 one. But in order to get rid of the hydro fan in that system, they go to a JZX100 one. So to run the JZX100 stuff, you need a JZX100 radiator, shroud, clutch fan, and then you can get a 2JZ water pump, and that will pretty much fix all your problems with cooling. You can run E-fans, but I don't have experience with those, and some guys say that it runs fine, other guys say that it still runs too hot for them. Other than that, a lot of 1J and 2J engine stuff are interchangeable, so that's nice. So going to the transmission, this is an R154. 1JZs and 2Js have R154s. You can still buy those brand new from Toyota, so that's a nice little perk. This one has a stock clutch on there, but you can get, depending on what you end up doing with the turbo setup, you can go with twin disc or just ACT 6-puck clutch. There's a lot of options. So the transmission side of things is pretty well sorted out. And then for guys who know they're going to go single turbo off the bat, Drift Motion makes a manifold that's pretty affordable. You just have to tell them that it's a right-hand drive application, and they can modify it to make it fit better. The twin turbos aren't awful as long as you keep them stock, like on stock boost. If you keep them on stock boost, they'll live for a while, or they'll live. It's just when people crank them up to like over 0.7 bar is like factory, is when they start smoking and they die and they shoot the exhaust wheels out the back. So keep the stock turbos for as long as you can, and then just like build the single turbo swap on the side. Getting these out, I did swap these turbos because they came as an extra set on the car, and I was like, I might as well do it. So swapping them out is not too bad, but definitely you're gonna dedicate a weekend and a couple days to take them off and put them back on if you want to get new gaskets and stuff like that. You can get new gaskets that sit there, the oil lines, the feed lines and all that. You can get those gaskets new, either from Drift Motion or find the part numbers. Next up is I had to replace the oil pan on this one. It was dented a little bit too much for my comfort. Yeah, so I replaced the oil pan on this one. It wasn't too bad of a job. Whenever I did the engine mounts, I lifted the engine up high enough and I was able to do the lower oil pan. I wasn't able to do the upper pan. I'm going to do that whenever I pull the engine out. So lower oil pan is the same as a GS300 that has a 2J in it. Pretty much all that stuff is interchangeable. I didn't have any problems with it. I used the Toyota black silicone, and it was good to go after that. I haven't had any oil leaks or anything like that after that. And then that pretty much summarizes the engine bay. Not much else really fails on a 1J. Like, I mean, you might have a sensor or something like that go off, but a lot of the times I hear guys on the Facebook group and stuff, it's just unplug it and you're good to go. Definitely check out your vac lines or your vacuum lines. Make sure that there's no holes or any obvious vacuum leaks. Luckily, the 1J's non-VVTi, they are map sensors, so if something does come undone, like your intercooler piping or something, yeah, it won't leave you stranded. It'll be low power, but it won't leave you stranded. So that definitely concludes the engine bay. Everything that I can think off the top of my head. Alright, so now we're going to move into the interior of the car. This is going to cover electronics, interior items, things like that. So starting off, this is a Mark II Tourer V, so the sporty edition. And you can ignore my middle section. I'm installing the new radio and sound system and all that. But the things that are common to fail inside of here are going to be your window regulators and the climate control unit. And sometimes on one of my friends' JZX, his cluster stopped working for whatever reason. So keep an eye out for those. But your window regulators are like the #1 thing that fail on these cars. On all the doors, not just the driver door, but like the passenger door, the whole car. The window regulators suck. So the only way to find those new or to repair those is to obviously find them. Yeah, first find them and then try to get them state or imported, and then you can repair them if they do fail. Symptoms. The symptoms that can show from them failing are whenever you roll up the window goes, and it kind of loses steam around in the middle, and then that's just like the first signs of it failing. So, and then one day it'll just drop to the floor, and you can't get it back up, and the only way to keep it up is to put a piece of wood or zip tie it together. So that covers pretty much the window side of things. The switches and stuff like that, also, mine have been worn out. This one doesn't click anymore. And then this one has a wiring problem where it's intermittent, where I pull up on it and then it'll sometimes go up, it'll sometimes won't. Back windows, I never roll down, so it doesn't really matter, or it's not really much importance to me, but they do fail as well. Talked about the cluster. The climate control thing. So the climate control is this thing. It sits inside this bezel. And what happened to me and how I discovered or was able to figure it out was, so it sits inside this bezel, and the symptoms you'll have of it not working are, this right here is the module. And the symptoms you'll have is you'll hit low, and it sounds like the car or the fans blow at full speed. And it doesn't matter what you do, they always blow at full speed. And then your climate here, like your temperature dial, if you go to cold, it's in Celsius obviously, so if you go to cold, it won't send the signal to the heater core valve to close it or open it, and so nothing would happen. So this is a good known one from my friend. I was able to test it at his house before I installed it, and I found out that was a problem, and that fixed that part. Other than that, that's like really the only thing that failed for me, interior wise. Seats. If you want to do aftermarket seats, your only options are to get aftermarket rails, obviously Bride rails, off Yahoo Auctions or Up Garage USA, if they have them in stock. And then seats, you can pretty much fit any seat you want in here. I'm gonna get Brides. I can't remember which one it is, but they're gonna be red Brides with the seat rails. And then other than that, that's pretty it. Not much really fails inside the interior wise. Lights and all that stuff works. If you only get one copy of your key, you can go to Ace Hardware here, and you can or any hardware store that cuts keys, and they can make you a brand new key and it'll fit just fine. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the brakes of the car. So the way it works on a JZX platform is Some things are interchangeable from IS300, other things are not. So, and this is only for the front, specifically for right now. So starting with the brakes, IS300 pads and rotors work for this car. So yeah, you can go to any parts store, get rotors and pads from an IS300, any generation. I mean, there's only one generation, but yeah, and those will work. Steering rack bushings, IS300 as well. And then other than that, arms and lower arms, I've heard mixed information where some of them, like the ones from IS300, the ones from an IS300 are either longer or shorter. I can't remember which one it is. So kind of play it by ear. One thing you do have to do on like any Toyota is bushings, like control arm bushings and suspension bushings and all that stuff. Coilovers, we're pretty lucky that we have BC Racing here and they have coilovers for these cars. I need to change mine because mine are starting to go out. The ride quality is getting a little worse. The rear is a different story. The rear is pretty much specific to the JZX platform, and pretty much you can only get your rotors from Right Hand Drive Japan, for example, where they have Project Mu ones like this, or they have Dextel I believe is the name, rotors. And the rotors, you need to buy the e-brake shoes or brake shoes, and those shoes sit on the inside of here and they expand out whenever you pull the e-brake. So it's not like an S chassis where you pull the e-brake and it pulls a cable on the caliper and it locks the brakes that way. So yeah, your e-brake and your caliper are separate here. Pads, however, can be bought here from a Toyota Avalon, so you're good to go there. Subframe bushings are a big problem on this car. Pretty much, if you drive with bad subframe bushings, the diff will hit the subframe, it'll cause it to crack. So either buy Serial 9, which guys up in Canada, these are the best ones I think you can get. They're expensive, but I kind of try not to cheap out on anything on this car just because of of what it is. So Serial 9 bushings in the rear. Another thing I recommend to change that a lot of people don't really mention, but I had a scare with it at the gas station, was the gas cap. So if you still have the original gas cap, you'll notice is sometimes when you go to move it, like let's say you go to a drive and you are under about half a tank, all the pressure and fume buildup starts pushing against the cap and it'll get stuck. So I was at the gas station at a quarter of a tank and I couldn't get it off. I don't know what happened, but I got super lucky. I put my hand on there and twisted as hard as I could and it came off. But I know other guys, the cap mechanism, the thing whenever it clicks, that noise happens whenever you go the opposite way. So replace the gas cap. Anything off an SC300 will work. You can get this. I think this one is just a regular replacement, so nothing fancy there. Obviously, these cars take 93 turbo engines. And then exterior-wise, obviously, God forbid something happens and someone hits your door, and someone hits your doors. If you have a friend that has a Chaser or a Cresta, the doors are different. They won't fit on a Mark II. So the reason why is because those are framed doors. So there's a pillar right here that goes up, and there's a frame, obviously. So that's the problem with those. These are frameless doors. Other than that, that's all that's coming to me right now for the exterior. Oh, I guess I should mention lights. Light bulbs here, all of them can be bought here in the US. Nothing fancy there. Yeah, nothing fancy there. Go to that ToyoDIY with the part number from that website, and it'll tell you what year it came off of, and you can just go buy it at. You can go to the parts store and buy one. And I guess the last section for the exterior stuff are going to be these headlights. So these headlights are aftermarket headlights. These are made by KFD, and they're okay. It's good to have headlights, obviously. There's just some flaws with them that I personally don't like, and it mainly comes to the corner lights. So on the original setup of these, the corner lights are like really stuck in there, and whenever you pop them off, they like almost like they really pop off. And with these, it's not really like that. The hole that you push them into is pretty loose, and over time they like to like come out a little bit. It doesn't do it too much on this side, but it did happen over here, and it does happen over here, where you'll go down the highway for a little bit and they'll start to separate out and more, and eventually it'll fall off. Like it'll come out of this area, and where it secures to the headlight, it'll pop off and it'll just dangle. And while you go down, that's what these marks are from, where it just falls off and it hits the body. So, and what happened to me one time was, and then your light is the only thing that holds it in there. So it's going down the freeway at 70 miles an hour, and that's the only thing holding it. It's gonna fly off. So I lost one of my corner lights. I had to order new ones from KFD, and it took about like a month to get here from Russia. So what I did to fix that was obviously put it back in, get the new light, and then what I ended up doing was I drilled a hole right behind the housing, and I ran a zip tie through it, and that zip tie connects to the chassis, and it's kept it in place this whole time. I also got double-sided tape and ran it through the middle, and they've never popped off ever again. So I guess if I was gonna give you guys any more tips, it's gonna be like owner tips. So this is like the owner tip thing. Definitely these cars aren't like S chassis. They are in a sense, but not really. I mainly mean that by terms of parts availability, because like an S chassis here in the US, like I can buy anything here in the US and it'll be here. Like I can get it off eBay, I can get it off friends, family, or family, but yeah, these cars have parts that are readily available here. These, on the other hand, do not. So sometimes parts take a few months to make. Sometimes they're on back order, or the company that once made them is no longer in business. Some weird stuff. So you either have to order stuff through Yahoo Auctions and learn how that website works, or get lucky that someone has them in the Facebook group, or the parting out them, or things like that. So it's not a lot of instant like, let me just go on this website, buy it, and it'll be here tomorrow to fix it. So keep that in mind when you do buy these cars. So luckily these cars don't need a lot of repairs usually, but what they do need is maintenance, because they're 30 years old. So if I'm going to recommend a mod, it's going to be the reliability mod. So definitely take care of this engine. Like I said, you would rather it be a part in your garage where you can fix it, rather than 4 hours away from home and the heater core busted, when you could have just replaced the heater core line right now, or the heater core valve, and just it not break. Things like that I recommend. Just stay on top of the maintenance. That's all these cars need, is just maintenance stuff. So to conclude everything, this is just a brief overview of the JZX platform, like an in-depth look into them and what I've done to mine. Only thing is, if you guys want to see more, let me know. I am doing a bunch of maintenance on it. I did say in my previous video where like it's not fun to watch, but like I started looking at the forums and what information is out there, and it's like not a whole lot of this stuff is recorded on YouTube. There's other guys out there that are also doing the same thing, so hopefully we can one day have a strong presence as big as the S chassis, or as much resources and information as the S chassis. So that's my goal. I'm just trying to document all the stuff that I'm doing with this car to help anybody in the future. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Leave a rating, and you'll see more from this car here soon.